A dull roar permeated the darkness. Her breaths caught, splintering in her mouth and lungs, sending shards through the stupor. The malevolent roar grew, pulling on her boots and dissolving all other sensations. It strained against her, its tendrils gripping her, then filling her mouth and nose, forcing itself through her, forcing those splinters through her very being. At that moment, the darkness threatened her again, and Up had lost all meaning. The roar pulled itself from her, crushing and contorting her against its powerful jaws and ripping at her tissues as its tendrils receded from inside of her. Then the roar split into a chilling spray. She grasped at the rocks, pulling herself away from the roar. She needed to get it out of her. Shuddering, she tensed and pushed the burning remnants of that thing out, spilling it out into the rocks, shuddering and gasping for solidity as she pulled herself away from the waves. Gradually, the world surfaced as the dregs of darkness were driven out by the shards which bit through her whenever she moved. In one direction, a flat, slate-gray expanse of misty spray merged with the rolling waves. The air was thick with salty spray, forming a familiar flavor. But here was also the rich, savory, earthen flavor of the wet rocks. As she pulled herself up, away from the waves and onto the sharp, stony shore, she became more aware of the familiar squishing of smaller waves and the damp cold replacing the saturated numbness of being adrift. Medium-sized rocks made up the shore of this alcove, nestled into the sheer, dark cliffs on all sides. She could see curved and splintered planks of wood scattered along the beach and thrust forcefully into cracks and pockets of the cliffs above. She struggled to her feet, her dripping, battered trenchcoat unsuccessfully trying to hide her limp from bruises and cracked bones she had yet to feel. Another wave swathed her in spray as she shuddered across the stones. She didn't notice, but with each step her boots left faint red swirls in the puddles of water and smears on the rocks she'd passed before. The swirls were wiped away by the next wave. She made her way towards a round object sticking out of the stones at the far point of where the waves could reach. It was a wide-brimmed hat, of the style seen worn by many rice farmers and fishermen of her village. Unlike those of her village, it was not constructed of straw and fiber. Its structural ribs were carefully carved bone, and its substance was a tough hide. She deftly pulled the hat out of the beach, sending several stones cascading away, before knocking any smaller stones stuck in the hat free with the heel of her hand. She settled the hat onto her head in a determined fashion, covering her dark red hair, which was drawn back with an intricate series of braids. Her hair was crusty and stiff from the salt. Another large wave obscured her as she turned to study the beach in more detail. She jerkily shuffled over to another object on the beach. She picked it up and thrust it beneath her coat before laboriously struggling back to the shelter of the larger rock where she'd pulled herself. The shock was filtering out of her veins now. She was beginning to feel her battered body. Grunting and straining with every step, she collapsed into the comparative shelter behind the large rock. The damp spray still enveloped her from time to time, but it would protect her from the brunt of the storm. She drew out the other object from the shrouded depths of her coat to check it. It was a particularly large revolver. It was a large and strange contraption. Parts of it were made out of dark, hammered metal and intricate copper gears. However, the rest of the weapon seemed to be constructed out of tissue. The long barrel was a weathered bone, and there appeared to be teeth, a large, strange variety protruding from the underside of the device. As she flipped out the wheel with a deft flick of her wrist, the misty air around her was illuminated with a soft purple glow. 7 shells, each about as big around as a dollar coin, were nestled into the magazine. The shells glowed faintly purple, with the mist and spray swirling about them in strange alien patterns. Seemingly satisfied, she closed the chamber, listened to the soft click as the mechanism locked back into place. She then tucked the large revolver back under her coat, and with the spray of another wave enveloping her, she wrapped her coat around herself and settled in to wait out the storm.